Hello all, welcome back to another episode of Collectors Corner. This is SilverHelm Coins and Collectibles. Thank you guys for joining me today. This is just the third episode of Collectors Corner. It's a podcast that I started with specific focus on sharing my journey as a collector, as well as encouraging others to start their own journeys of collections. So whether this be stamps, coins, or even other collectibles, I find that I want to create this space where we can all grow and basically walk on our own collector's journeys. On the first episode, I kind of did a little bit of background of like how I got into collecting. The second episode, I talked about what determines value in a collectible. And today's episode, I want to talk about collecting for enjoyment versus collecting for investment. So as we'll come to see, these are the two motivations behind starting a collection or growing a collection. They can actually intertwine, and at the end, I will give my own version of what I like to call my hybrid approach that kind of like combines everything. But that being said, let us get into it. So collectors can have very different motivations to starting and growing a collection. This means that the reasons and the motivations behind why they collect can be different. And now we are going to look at different criteria you can kind of ask yourself to determine what type or what motivation drives your collecting. So we'll start off with collecting for enjoyment. Firstly, you enjoy history. If you find that you appreciate history and the historical significance behind a collectible, say for example a stamp that is almost 130 years old, then you appreciate the history behind that collectible. And that's something you can take into consideration because this will be part of the collecting for enjoyment because you enjoy history. Secondly, would be you appreciate the design. So this can be if you're collecting Commonwealth coins. Some of them, especially the Australian ones, had some really beautiful designs on the coins. If you appreciate these designs and you just enjoy uh, the designs themselves, that would be another key indicator that you are doing this for enjoyment as a collector. Another example would be stamps. They often come with a lot of designs. If you are a thematic collector, let's say you only focus on insects, then the designs will actually themselves bring you the enjoyment. Next up is you enjoy researching the product. So this is also part of collecting. You can buy something, you can, get a couple of new stamps, and then the first thing you actually go ahead and do is you research the specific collectible. So this is criteria for enjoyment. This basically adds to the hobby as you are researching and basically discovering what the item is, what it's all about, where it came from, um, basically all those details you enjoy researching. Another important criteria, or a big one, is you enjoy the thrill of discovering something. This is often why I enjoy going to stamp fairs or coin fairs. You never know what you might find, and then this thrill of discovering something that you would like to add to your collection is just part of the enjoyment-based motivation for collecting. I enjoy going to stamp fairs, to coin fairs, and most of the time, you end up discovering something that you did not expect, and this leads to the enjoyment of the thrill of discovering something. Next up is you enjoy building a collection over time. So for the enjoyment-based collector, time is a key factor. You enjoy doing it for a long period of time. Me personally, I have decided to continue with my collections lifelong. This is just something personally I've decided that I will invest basically a lifetime's worth of collecting time. And this is for my own enjoyment, definitely. But it's also to just bring that focus back to my reasons, the enjoyment-based reason behind collecting. And then lastly, you simply like owning interesting pieces. An example from my own experience would be the Bugatti Type 35 model car. This was just something really interesting. It was way back. My dad built it, and it's been in the family for over 2 decades. So you just enjoy owning something interesting. That's a clear indicator that you fall into the category of enjoyment motivated collecting. Okay, so now we'll look at the other motivation behind collecting, and that is collecting for investment. Okay, and these criteria you can ask yourself as well to see if you fit into this motivation of why you collect or grow a collection. So firstly, you pay attention to rarity. This is often a key factor or pillar for value. As we mentioned in episode 2, the rarity of a collectible can directly influence its value. So if you're collecting for investing, one of the things you often have to look for is rarity. So that would be the difference between buying a coin that was minted in millions to buying a coin that was maybe a couple 100,000. So that is something to take into consideration when you collect for investment. Next up is condition. This would also be in the coin category, although I will mention stamps as well. So the highest value coins would often be those that are rare, yes, but the condition, the grading of the coin would then need to be taken into consideration for a collector that's motivation is investment, because the higher the grade, the higher the value. Same can be applied to stamps. If it is your everyday definitive cancelled stamp, might not hold a lot of monetary value, but if it is mint never hinged, then all of a sudden the value skyrockets. So that's just some of the things a collector needs to take into consideration if you're doing it as an investment. Um, and the next up is you obviously, before purchasing, you research the market demand. So silver coins will always be in demand. So that is an investment you can buy because it is always liquid, it is always in demand. That being said, we just spoke about silver. So if you are from a collector for investment, you will often look at the silver percentages or silver content or precious metal content um, from the coins themselves. So whether you buy something that's at 25% silver or you buy a coin that is 92.5% sterling silver, there'll be a big difference in value. This is also known as stacking, where you are collecting silver at the lowest price you can get it, and then when the spot price increases, your odds or the value increases, and your odds of selling it for a profit is quite high. So that also being said, we just spoke about the resale aspect. Is if you are collecting silver coins, you are stacking them, you hold on to them for a couple of years, but your end goal is to eventually resell it and possibly generate a profit from that deal. That, I would say, is the key difference between someone who is doing it for enjoyment and someone who is collecting for investment. Because with investment, you're always thinking, how can I sell it in the future for a profit? Okay, Me personally, I have found that that's how I began, especially with the worldwide silver coin collection. Is I just began thinking this is a good investment opportunity. Silver is going to become more in demand in the future, and that's also why I built the collection around predominantly silver coins. Um, and then, okay, so there we just had the two criteria you can kind of look at and kind of evaluate which form or which motivation of collecting you fall under. But I would like to say, in conclusion of both of them, even though there are two different motivations, a collector doesn't necessarily have to choose one or the other. So that is a point I would like to make, is you can have a blend. You can have a hybrid between investment motivated and enjoyment motivated, and they can kind of like come together in your own collection as they have come together in my collection. So now I'm just going to give an example from my own collection and then go over how this coin can actually tie into both of the motivations behind collecting. So what I have today is a 1826 1 shilling from Great Britain. Grade is fine. And this is actually a coin I purchased a while ago on an online, at a coin fair, sorry, at a coin fair. And now I'm going to explain what are the two mindsets or how they can intertwine with this collectible. Okay, so if you're looking at the stacker mindset, that is for the silver and the precious metal content, you basically asked, how much silver am I getting for my money? So you're looking at a coin like this. It is 92.5% silver. It is sterling silver. And with my research, it is close to 5 grams of actual silver weight. Okay, that's in this coin. That means there is silver value, there is precious metal value, and it is worthwhile to in fact stack it because it is 5 grams of silver. So the one or the collector that would be solely investment driven would focus more on coins like these and getting the most amount of silver for the least amount of money. Okay, and then the other side, which also adds to this coin, is the collector mindset, and that's basically asking, what coin is this? Okay, it's a 1 shilling. It's a pre-decimal coin from Britain. Where was it made? Well, okay, well, it was minted in Great Britain in 1826. Another question is the condition. So, as stated, this coin is in that would be the grade, and I graded it as fine. So those are more questions that the collector mindset would have. And as you actually came to see within this specific coin as a collectible, there was, or there is two parts of it that actually come together and they create the overall enjoyment and the collector and the investment behind it. Because for me personally, if you were to look at this coin, yes, it has a collector appeal, but it also has that investment appeal because it's a precious metal. If silver is going to skyrocket in the next 5 years, then this coin's value will increase, and I would have made a profit if I were to resell it. So that is an example from my own. Next up, we are just going to look at different forms of value, not what determined value, because that was in episode 2, but this is the different forms of value a collectible can have. So first up is the financial value. So this is often what you paid for the collectible. This is the value that it is worth, or that you paid for it. And then The next up is what would the market pay for it? So that form of value is if you were to resell it, and this is the investment-based collector would think, what is the resale or the market demand value for this item? So if we look at the shilling again, the financial value would be what I paid for it. So that was close to about, let's say, $15. No, sorry, it was about $12. And then the what market would pay is if you then go look at online listings such as eBay and such, and actually see what these are selling for. You know, if there's one that sold for $20, then that's a good indicator that you can also sell it for $20. Next up is the other form of value, which is the historical significance. So this particular coin is approaching 200 years. So it is a really old coin. There's a lot of history behind it. This can be, interesting to research and to dive into the various historical significance behind collectibles. Personal value. So this is kind of like what the collectible means to you. You know, this is the value that it gives to you. And an example I would like to make for that one is this September 1972 commemorative Tutankhamun with the stamp. Okay. And the personal significance behind this is it was a day, the 26th of September. It was a day after my father's birthday. So this collection has this collectible has personal value to me, and I think that's why I'm going to keep it, because it just has that connection that collectors often seek with collectibles. I mean, in this case, it is a day younger than my father. So that was the personal value that it creates to me and the personal value that I find from it. So that would definitely be the what the collectible means to you. So this is often subjective. It can be your own sentimental value. Another one I would have to say is my stamp collection that I inherited. This has sentimental value. This is the personal value that the collectible adds to me. Next up is the enjoyment valuable. So this is part of the first motivation of collecting. It's collecting for enjoyment. And how much enjoyment is the collectible providing to you? So an example would be, I just love going through the coins, researching them, the enjoyment of placing them in coin flips, labeling them, adding them to the inventory. That is all the enjoyment that I get out of the collectibles. That would also tie into this stamp collection. The enjoyment I recently received from it was just going over a lot of the old ones that I inherited. They still had an envelope on, so I had to soak them. And this enjoyment, that enjoyment of actually soaking them and getting them ready for the album, that was another form of value. And then after they were soaked, what I then had to do was categorically and alphabetically sort them and place them in the album. And this you usually do with country-wise, so it is alphabetical, and then by date. So meaning the the oldest at the top, and as you progress, they become younger and younger. I also created these country dividers for the collection, and that was an enjoyment. And I mean, I can just get lost. I can just get lost in the stamp album if I'm organizing it, if I'm doing it, that enjoyment from it, the king of hobbies. And so that is a form of value as well. And then how much pleasure you get from owning it. So this is something, if it's like Let me see if I don't have an example over here again. Um, yes. So, I mean, if you also look at the first day covers from Vatican City from 1975, these ones I personally enjoy and receive pleasure from because they tie exactly to the Vatican City. It is a vintage. You know, as a Catholic, you know, my faith is a major cornerstone of my life, and bringing that into my stamp collecting brings me a certain sense of pleasure because it has meaning to me. You know, this can kind of tie into the personal value as well behind collectibles. So these are just some of the forms of value a collectible can take. I mean, obviously there are more, and there are more ways you can enjoy them. Uh, I would just like to conclude by then saying my own approach, as I would say, the hybrid approach that I take to collecting. So it started with an investment centric approach. This was the silver coins and just buying them because I saw it as an investment opportunity where if the silver spot price is going to skyrocket, then all of a sudden I can sell it at higher and I can make a profit. So there was definitely investment component to my original thinking as to why I began the collection. And that started from the beginning because before I was kind of in the game and in the collector's game, I decided to sell some coins and I saw they had value because they had intrinsic precious metals. So that was definitely something that boosted me thinking this is something worthwhile to buy. And then now in my own journey has come to the point where it's something worthwhile to collect. So from the beginning, there was this investment approach. But then again, I would say that is a good indicator of helping me what to acquire. But then what led me to keep collectibles is the enjoyment behind it. So I mean, the stamps, you know, I have received hours and hours of enjoyment out of them. I enjoy collecting stamps, going to a stamp fair, and especially going online and just looking at a stamp that I particularly enjoy, and then purchasing it, and then coming back home and adding it to the stamp album. This enjoyment is actually what kind of like solidified my collector urge, if I could say it as such. And so definitely I would encourage a hybrid approach between investment or collecting for investment and collecting for enjoyment. As stated earlier, these don't have to be separate. For me personally, they are blended. The silver, what helps me decide to buy, and the question I ask is how much silver am I getting for my money? So that is the investment side. And then if it's a collector, then I often ask, all right, but what's the historical significance? And if I'm also looking at the enjoyment, then I would take a coin, I would research it, how many were minted, what grade do I estimate? Is it fine, very fine? Um, if I'm lucky, is it uncirculated? And the same can be said about stamps. I mean, of course, I inherited the stamps that were cancelled, but after which I have actually purchased mint never hinged stamps. So this, as you know, the condition is the highest, or the grading is the highest you can get for stamps is mint never hinged. And I have purchased some of them. Let me actually see if I can show one. So I also bought them in complete sets. But an interesting one we have is this spiders from South Africa. This is a complete set, mint never hinged. In fact, they've never been used. Let me just don't touch that one. They've never been used. And these stamps you can, well, the idea behind them is you could just peel them off and then stick them on the envelope. So that was a mint never hinged set I actually acquired later on in the collection. I did not inherit this one. So definitely when I am buying, I do keep in mind the investment aspect behind it. You know, am I buying something that is valuable? And then lastly, if I'm looking at to resell the collection in the future, that's more of like a business decision, I would have to say. And I have actually seen a lot of lifetime collectors, especially now with the online, they end up selling duplicates, they end up selling collectibles they don't enjoy anymore. And this is a form of business where you can either already make a profit and then reinvest and just buy yourself different pieces of collectibles you enjoy, or you can keep it and you can kind of say, like, this was my investment and this was the profit that I made from it. So, from the conclusion of today's one is you can have both. You can be a collector that does it for enjoyment, and you can be a collector that does it for investment. I personally use both, or I have kind of like both at the back of my mind. But I would definitely say that enjoyment has become the forerunner, because I just enjoy collecting that much, and I would much rather spend a lifetime collecting than a lifetime of just buying something and then flipping it, buying something and then flipping it. Although there is nothing wrong with that approach, that is the arbitrage business model, and I actually respect people that do research and they buy it for profit and then resell. So definitely that was an interesting discussion for today. Let me know in the comments down below what motivations you guys have for your own collections. Is it purely for enjoyment or is it purely for investment? If you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. There's a lot more stamps and coins and banknotes in the future. So thank you guys for joining, and I will see you all in the next one.